Okay, gentlemen, welcome to our Friday Erev Shabbat Parashat class. B'simanat Tabah. That's what we say before we begin reading the Torah anew. Here, Sefer Bereshit and Parashat Bereshit. So we'll say that before our class as well. B'simanat Tabah. It should be a good sign. For Azat Hashem, we should have haslaha in our study of Torah Shebichtav as we start the new cycle of learning Torah and Chumash. I'll start off by saying that this class could be considered to be illegal. And I don't mean because there's more than 10 people in the room. I'll tell you what I mean soon. Let's analyze some facts and figures about creation presented to us in the first few days of creation. Vahi Erev, Vahi Boker, Yom Echad became evening and morning on the first day. And yet, as we know, evening and morning or day and night are determined by the sun, and the sun was not created. Famous question. Also on day one, Vayabdel Elohim ben ha'or uben ha'choshech, and Hashem, God, divided between the light and between the night. The problem is that darkness is not a substance in and of itself. Darkness is an absence of light. And therefore, where one exists, the other cannot. And so there is no real comprehensible way for us to understand the notion of separation, quote unquote, of light and dark. Day two, Vayomer Elohim yihi rakia b'toch hamayim v'hi mavdil ben mayim lamayim. Let there be firmament in the midst of the waters, and let there be a divide between waters and waters. What possible meaning could we attribute to waters and the firmament, waters above heaven? There's no evidence of any bodies of water floating in outer space, and it's hard to understand what this could be referring to. Day three, we have the command of Yikavu hamayim mitachat hashamayim b'makom echad v'tere'eh hayabasha. Let the waters gather, let's say, beneath the heaven. Let they be gathered into one spot. And as well, we have no scientific knowledge of waters or oceans that flow together at any point. And we're not aware of one place on earth to which waters flowed. So, difficult realities regarding creation, difficult statements, difficult textual truisms about the creation of the world. And there's different reactions to trying to reconcile these questions and many others like them. And I'll tell you that the reactions often fall into one of two extremes. One extreme is that just to simply write off scientific discovery and advances, to write off, so to speak, facts that we're aware of that may conflict with the text that we see, and write it off to, flaws and follies of man. And, just to dismiss anyone that puts forth such information, anyone with the title of professor, and, live in bliss without really reconciling these issues that we have with the text of Torah. On the other extreme, in a very inappropriate way, there may be someone who will just claim that, God forbid, our Torah to be antiquated and therefore not, so to speak, up to date. But a less cynical person might just have a contention on Hachamim and the Midrashim and their attempts, so to speak, to cover up the truth and to call what Hachamim used to interpret, their manner of interpreting the text, as something that's primitive. So you have, naturally this occurs, I call this organic polarization, where we live in a world of extremes. People naturally gravitate to different extremes, and it's sort of expected. And because of that, organically, we have this polarization in our, it's really brought to light in the approach in the Jewish world towards a Parashat, Bereshit, creation, where science and text seem to butt heads and conflict. And therefore you have, those who feel a need to come to defense of tradition, so to speak, and to ward off, foreign influences from our Torah Kedoshah. And then on the other extreme, those who feel the need to flex their intellectual muscles and show their progressiveness and their ability, not to be caught in the dark ages. I think neither is correct. And at this point, I'll give you my disclaimer why this class might be illegal. There's a halacha stated explicitly by the Rambam in Halachot Yesodei Torah, which basically it takes two different modes of study. One's called Maaseh HaMerkava, which is way off the charts, the deep prophecy of Yehezkel Hanavi of the chariot and the throne of God, and Maaseh Bereshit, and the actual story of creation. And in the story of creation, the halacha stated by the Rambam is that it's asur, prohibited to teach in public, assuming, of course, that you understand it yourself, which is a tremendous assumption. And it's only mutar, says the Rambam, to teach it in private. And the specific words are le'ehad modi'im devarim elu umelamedim otam. You can, to a certain private audience, private person, really, if you understand, teach it to him in a very, understanding, comprehensive manner. That's all you can do. Otherwise, for someone who understands the actual truth behind the story of creation, you can't give such a class. It's a good thing for you. I don't understand it. And therefore, we'll share our confusion together. But I see the need to forge a discussion on this matter simply because, and you should as well, I and you should not want to compromise. Absolutely not want to compromise. Compromise either side of this argument. And what I mean is as follows. On one hand, I don't want to compromise discovering God. I don't want to compromise the ability to access the knowledge, the science, and technology that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has implanted in this world and facilitated our ability to understand his universe and his creation, and by extension, understand him. I don't want to pass over the opportunity to discover as much as I can, as a faithful Jew should want to discover, about a universe created by a single God, that in this solar system alone that we live in, the small solar system, has between 100 to 200 billion stars. And compared to other galaxies, our galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy, 100 to 200 billion stars, compared to other galaxies that are estimated to have between 1 to 2 trillion stars. And in terms of the amount of galaxies themselves, a universe that in only the observable universe itself is estimated to have between 100 to 200 billion galaxies. Do that math. Your calculator cannot. And in a universe that is ever expanding. As we know, every 3.5 million light years of space, this universe of ours expands at the rate of 46 miles per second. Get that. And in this earth that we live on, which is infinitesimal compared to the rest of the universe, not even a speck of sand, alone embodies and incorporates 8.7 million species of beings, 2 million alone under the seas that we have yet to discover. And in this human body of ours, we, biologically speaking, incorporate, get this, 37.2 trillion cells. Gentlemen, with a universe like this, I don't want to compromise, overlook, and just dismiss everything that I could know about God's universe. On the other hand, I feel this discussion must be had because we can't compromise on our Torah. And we can't overlook and deny the fact that our Torah Kedoshah is not only completely authentic, every pasuk, every word, every letter, every nuance, but that it has the ability to incorporate and encompass all knowledge. Nor do I want to compromise on the brilliance and insight of Chachamim, who were masters in all knowledges, not by accident, because they felt it incumbent upon them in order to be masters of Torah, to know God as much as they possibly could. They were absolutely at the cutting edge in every realm of knowledge, including science, including astronomy. They understood everything that they could in their times, and I guarantee you, were they to be alive today, would be at the forefront of scientific knowledge and discovery. And therefore, this discussion needs to be had to the extent that our meager minds can have such a discussion. The discovery needs to be attempted to the extent that we could possibly understand. And therefore, when we look at these difficult textual challenges that I presented to you in Maaseh Bereshit, yes, beyond us to fully understand how they describe creation of the world. But perhaps, just perhaps, with the knowledge that we have, we can begin to put two and two together. Maybe this original light that's spoken of in day one is really an intense concentration of pure energy in the form of what they call electromagnetic radiation, better known by scientists as the primeval fireball. That is the result of the Big Bang, which was created by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the one and only creator of the world 15 billion years ago. Just perhaps. That does not conflict the Torah or any statements made by Chachamim. Perhaps, maybe, we can follow scientists like the Orthodox, God-fearing scientist, Professor Nathan Abiezer, in his book In the Beginning, who tells us possibly, and you can't discount this, that the darkness spoken of that we're separating with the light is this plasma interdispersed in this primeval fireball, and which is too hot to even sustain matter. And that plasma is really the form of what we call trapped light, which eventually began to cool and then turned into regular normative molecules. And that is the separation of light to dark, just perhaps. And maybe this idea of separating the waters from the heaven has to do with the billions of comets that are out there at the end of our solar system that we estimate eventually gravitated there and took the form somewhere between 1 billion and 1 trillion tons of ice at the end of our solar system. And they now sit there at the outskirts. And perhaps when the sun and the planets began to form so many years ago, there was that separation between the water and the water, so to speak, out there in space. Gentlemen, I can't be sure of any of these theories, but we can't discount them either. We're obligated to explore them. We're obligated to know as much as we can as Chachamim, as the Mefarshim, as the Ben Abachia says, the only way to know God is to know his world and to be involved in a never-ending quest to understand HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and thereby, as the Rambam says in the next halakha, after telling us that we can't teach creation publicly, saying that the more man contemplates, is educated, and knows about creation, the more he can build a love of God at the highest level, and the more he himself is humbled with the understanding who he is relative to the rest of the existing universe. And so I leave you with questions this morning, and I hope the class was legal, but I leave you with saying that Parashat Bereshit presents to us many, many, many difficulties and questions in reconciling our perfect, authentic text of Torah with science, which is one with God. There is no separation between science and Hashem. It is his universe. It is all one. And in our small way, in this new world, Hashem has given us access to greater discoveries and knowledge. We should do our best to slowly break in to those quagmires, and our inquiries should somehow turn into small bits of knowledge, where slowly but surely, Be'ezrat Hashem, with the help of Hachamim and the experts, we can start to reconcile our Torah with the knowledge that's out there and have more and more a whole and comprehensive knowledge of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and his world. Baruch Adonai L'olam, amen. Shabbat shalom.